rather than fulfilling the Pokemon catchphrase, what if instead I only captured the hardest ones to catch? Each Pokemon has its own catch rate, a number that ranges from 3, the hard to catch legendaries, to 255, for the ones who are very easy to capture, like the Route 101 Mons. The majority of even fully evolved Pokemon do not have a catch rate below 45. As a matter of fact, in Hoenn, there are only 4 non-legendary Pokemon with a sub 45 catch rate. So, let's see how hard it is to not only catch those 4 Mons, but to then beat Emerald with only them. Before we begin, which Pokemon do you think they are? Our journey begins with my irresponsible neighbor letting a kid she just met wander around her house unattended. I could be a little thief for all she knows. Brendan does have this nice unwatched Pokeball that could certainly house a hard to catch Pokemon, but I'm caught in the act, unfortunately, not that Brendan says anything about it. I get out of there before he changes his mind and end up helping his dad with a raccoon problem. The thing is, these starter Mons, along with their evolutions, have a catch rate of 45, which is right at the cutoff, meaning I can't keep them. I pick Trico to get me through a few battles, as Brendan gets Torchic. This will make things harder for me in the long run, but it's supposed to be a challenge after all. Back in Little Root Town, he gives me a few Pokeballs. That's nice and all, but for my first encounter, I'm going to need a heck of a lot more. On Route 101, there are no hard to catch Pokemon. For example, both Wurmple and Poochyena have a 255 catch rate, which means once their HP is close to the red, they are guaranteed to be caught in a single Pokeball. That's like the opposite of this video's theme. Still, I'm not discouraged, because the next encounter is a pseudo-legendary Beldum, with a catch rate of 3, the lowest it can possibly be. Obviously, I hacked into the game because there aren't any viable encounters for quite a while, and I don't want to just use a Trico. He doesn't start off amazing, so I felt like it's a fair trade-off. Anyway, with such a low catch rate, each Pokeball has less than a 1% chance to capture. 4 Pokeballs do not succeed, as the Beldum offs itself with Takedown, which, to be fair, I think I'd rather go that route than be trapped in a tiny Pokeball only seeing the light of day when it's time to battle. 5 Beldums, and 21 Pokeballs later, I throw the final ball, praying for a miracle, which doesn't work. So, I'm out. Good thing I saved before wasting all of those balls. By the way, in case you were unsure, a wild Pokemon's level does not change their catching probability. It seems weird to me that it doesn't, but that's the way it is. This time, I catch Little Beldum with only 3 Pokeballs. Appropriate, giving its catch rate and now name. I try to kick this tree gecko to the curb, but he just comes right back. Not sure why he's so attached, we literally just met. Alright, into the box you go. I have a real hard to catch Mon now, who needs to level up by picking on these weak little Lotats. Its only attacking move is Takedown, which isn't horrible, but with Beldum's low attack and the recoil damage, it's also not great. While I'm clearing this grass patch of wild Mons, I find the rare Ralts. Now you might think this guy would be harder to catch, but he's a 235, barely better than a Wurmple. Even Gardevoir is still at 45, so it's a no-go for me. Just for fun, I randomized Waldy's encounter, and it ends up being a Metapod against his Caterpie? That seems pretty unlikely. Either way, the pod is also too easy to catch. The same is true for everything on these subsequent routes, including the Petalburg Woods. So let's just jump ahead to Rustboro. Since Takedown is literally the only move Beldum can learn, I'm not super pumped about this rock gym battle. Let's get some practice in against the weaker trainers. It takes some time, but with takedowns, Beldum defeats Josh and his Geodude, as well as Hiker Mark after running out of PP, which gives me an idea. For Plan A, Beldum needs to waste his takedown PP against random wild Pokemon. That way he struggles against Roxanne, which is just a tad more powerful than the resisted takedown. I go into the battle not expecting much, and that's what I get. Roxanne heals her Geodude, and Beldum can't even get past her first Mon. That's not great, and it marks the first loss. I try again with takedowns this time, just to verify, and the difference in damage is so minuscule, I can barely tell the difference. In the end, I still lose. Okay, let's level up a bit with wild Pokemon and trainers to the north. And I get another loss to this Machop. Not a great start there, Beldum. We get some payback and return to Roxanne 3 levels higher. It still doesn't help. I almost beat the first rock though, kind of. At this point, I'm getting tired of losing and just say, screw it. I might as well get to level 20 and evolve Beldum, where it learns both Confusion and Metal Claw, moves that should be great against the first 2 gym leaders. With those claws, the 2 Geodudes are knocked out no problem. Nosepass survives the first hit and falls on the second. Well, that was a lot easier. On my way out of town, Brendan stops me to demand a battle. Metang has plenty of experience knocking off Lotads, no problem there. With Confusion, not even the Fire Chicken stands a chance, even though it's not fighting type yet. You know who is? Brawly and his, well, fighting types. Great segue. Machop gets one-shot with Confusion, and that's the end of that. For Meta-type, Metang starts with Takedown, switching to Confusion after a Bulk Up. It only takes a few turns anyway. Makuhita similarly Bulk Ups, but that does nothing to prevent his death. Good thing Beldum gains the Psychic type after evolving. Beating Brawly with just a Steelmon would have sucked. Granite Cave is home to the hard-to-catch Steven, because he's always flying around on his Steel Bird, but I still don't get any new mons. They're all too easy to catch. I don't need them anyway. Metang is doing great now. You want to take it on, Brendan? Be my guest. What's the worst that could happen? Well, Metang could immediately get confused by Wingull. That's not great, but the bird is still knocked out. The other bird, however, gets a free chance to focus energy, survives Confusion, fighting type notwithstanding, and Ember crits Metang to death. Well, I did tell you I chose Trico to make things more difficult. That was an unexpected loss, but I learned from my mistake. This time, I still don't have any Person Berries, but thankfully, it got Water Gunned instead, entombing Wingull in some rocks. Combuskin focus energies again, and is unable to Ember. Lombre's Confusion, takedown for the win. I'll admit, I didn't expect to lose there. I had my eyes set on Watson instead. Oh, and Little Wally, whose Metapod magically transferred into a Ralts? That's not an evolution I'm aware of. I'm glad we won there so easily, because the next fight is the exact opposite. Voltorb is too strong to be one-shot with takedown, and gets a crit spark. Watson heals it, and it promptly blows up in my face. Electrike is one-shot, but the recoil damage knocks Metang out too. That was not ideal. Let's try again. This time, the Voltorb battle goes quite a bit better, as Metang confusions, followed by a takedown to bypass a heal. Electrike is again one-shot. Metang has Rock Smash to defeat Magneton, but it's far too weak, and 2 Shockwaves make me lose again. The same thing happens next time too, and a few more times just for good measure. I decide to get a few extra levels here, and try again at level 29. Thanks to a crit Rock Smash, Magneton is finally defeated, bringing out Manectric for the very first time. And I do technically defeat it, but Metang knocked itself out too. And the victory goes to Watson. Lame. Several tries later, I get to Manectric again. But this time, Metang hangs on with 10 HP after a takedown, beating Watson after a ridiculous number of attempts. This is much harder already than the Kanto catch rate video. Check that one out if you haven't yet seen it. Up to this point, we've had a lot of, well, not fun, so much as a miserable experience, playing through Emerald with only a Metang. But I'm happy to say, it's time for our second encounter. On Route 113, there is another hard mon to catch. No, not Slugma, and certainly not the 255 catch rate Spinda. Gross. No, the Pokemon I want is not only hard to catch, but hard to find, with a 5% encounter rate. After what felt like hours, including a grass patch change, I finally find the Steel Bird Skarmory, who has a 25 catch rate. At this HP, every Great Ball has about a 10% chance to succeed. And it only takes 2. That's way better than Beldum. Things are looking up. Or are they? As I take my Steel Bird, and whatever the heck Metang is, into the middle of a volcano to battle Maxie. Maybe I'm pulling an AJ here in preparation for Flannery?
Get back in the water!
Either way, Metang easily defeats Maxie's Mightyena, and even takes out Camerupt too. I didn't expect that. Skarmory then makes her debut to hit herself several times against this Zubat, before eventually knocking it out. I thought that Camerupt was going to be a much bigger issue. Well, maybe his wasn't, but Flannery's 100% is. When she actually decides to overheat, that is. This happens a number of times. What'd you expect? I only have 2 steel types. At one point, Camerupt is defeated, but Torkoal does the exact same thing. Before leveling up a bit, I try a desperate strategy. Skarmory starts the battle against Numel to sand attack as much as possible. She doesn't last long, but then Metang can come out and try to get a Metal Claw attack boost. If only it could learn Bulk Up, this would be so much easier. With plus attack, Camerupt still survives, ending that attempt. A few failed attempts later, let's level up Skarmory a bit, and Secret Power instead. Now, I'm not sure how, but Skarmory manages to paralyze Numel, Slugma, and Camerupt with a single Secret Power each. That is crazy lucky. She still falls to Camerupt, but that lowered special attack means it doesn't see an overheat kill for Metang. It Metal Claws several times, getting a single attack boost, as Flannery swaps into Torkoal, which is the first time that's happened. The Turtle misses an overheat, getting double returned for the knockout. Camerupt makes a return to also get returned. Well, 2 horrible gyms in a row. I really hope my dad doesn't go as poorly. Let's find out. Skarmory faces off against the super easy to capture Route 113 Pokemon, missing the first hit, but winning with a Steel Wing Air Cutter anyway. Vigoroth is double Steel Winged, no problem. Lanoon survives several hits, thanks to a heal, and Skarmory gets a defense boost. Nice. Slacking is paralyzed, hit a few times, countering Skarmory to the grave. Between Rock Smash to lower defense and Confusion to avoid another counter, Metang defeats Slacking, winning the 5th gym badge first try. That was so much easier than the previous ones. As a reward for being so ridiculously awesome, Wally's dad gives me an HM that none of my hard to catch Mons can learn. Yet. Possible foreshadowing right there. I make it across the river somehow, encountering Brendan. Skarmory defeats all 3 of his Pokemon, barely breaking a sweat. Not that birds sweat. Especially not the steel variety. They'd totally rust, and Pokemon is nothing if not realistic. After that simple battle, resulting in an actually usable HM, thanks man, there's a 3rd viable encounter on Route 120. It hasn't been nearly as long as the first time. Yes, it's a dark type, but not this pooch. This guy has an 8% encounter rate and a 30 catch rate, slightly bigger than Skarmory in both regards. Obviously, I'm talking about Absol, who I get in the very first Great Ball, though it was only a 14% chance. See? Everything is going better right now. It'll be smooth sailing from here on out, I'm sure. Especially when Absol learns Swords Dance 1 level later. So I might as well use our newest Mon and move against Winona. He Swords Dances twice, getting strong enough to one-shot Swablu, Tropius, and Pelipper. Skarmory is obviously another matter. Winona wastes all of her heals here, but thanks to a lucky crit, Absol barely makes it out alive. He doesn't get much farther though. No matter, several Steel Wings from Skarmory defeat Altaria, earning another badge without a whiteout. To prove that Absol doesn't even need those swords to be awesome, I pit him up against Brendan for our final rival battle. He is strong enough for strength to knock out everyone in 2 shots each. This opens him up to some damage, but it's not really that much. Pelipper, being Pelipper, stalls a good amount with Protect, but that's fine, it doesn't work. Not even Ludicolo can stand up to this disaster Pokemon. That's an unfortunate description, but appropriate considering Brendan's final massacre. I enter another volcano, which is totally safe now that I have a non-steel type. Maxie tries to catch Groudon, who has a 5 catch rate, slightly higher than Beldum was. He fails, of course, and we start to battle. It doesn't go super well for him, as Metang immediately gets a Metal Claw attack boost, returning Mightyena. Camerupt is not so easily defeated, though Skarmory takes care of that. Our 2 flying Mons trade wing smacks back and forth, with the steel one doing much more damage. Well, that was easy, Maxie. As is defeating this Team Aqua admin, causing Archie to run away into the ocean. I still don't have a surfing Mon, but we're getting close. First, it's Tate and Liza time. Though Absol is a dark type, Dark is special in this gen, while Ghost is physical. Even with Stab, Shadow Ball is a much better option than Bite. I was hopeful Skarmory and Absol would immediately knock out Claydol, but not quite. It takes a few turns, thanks to a heal, but it does work eventually. In the middle of the battle, after Solrock comes out, 3 of the 4 Pokemon here take a break to eat a berry snack. I can't blame them, berries are delicious. It doesn't help Skarmory all that much though. Sunrock and Moonrock are knocked out easily enough, though Xatu, with his super calmed down mind, remains. Not for much longer. That wasn't too bad. Before getting our fourth and final encounter of the run, my superior Metang teams up with Stevens to defeat Maxie once and for all in this double battle. At which point, he gives me Dive, the very HM I need to find our final Pokemon. At the bottom of the ocean, I find a bunch of easy to catch clams and an electric anglerfish. I do kind of like Chinchou, but he's not what I'm looking for. No, I need the thought to be extinct Relicanth, with a 5% encounter rate and 25 catch rate. It seems to be a trend here in Hoenn that the hard to catch Mons are also quite rare. He takes a number of different balls. I choose to save my Master Ball, not sure for who, but Dive Balls are pretty good too. A few of those and I catch him. Welcome to the team, final Pokemon. Let's see what you can do against Archie. Unfortunately, not all that much. He has good defense, with other not so good stats. I tried a Rock Tomb thanks to a couple of swaggers, but the fish just gets roared away. Alright, fine. Skarmory can take it out, Crobat, and Sharpedo as well. Good job there, bird. Archie fails to capture Kyogre. Again, it has a 5 catch rate, so not all that surprising. Rayquaza, on the other hand, is at 3, though in a couple more recent games, he's at 45. No idea why. Either way, legendaries are not part of this run. For the last gym leader battle, I begin with Metang, who makes quick work of Love Disc. Expecting an Earthquake, I pivot to Skarmory, who then spikes a few times just for fun. It's a new move she just learned. She deals some damage too, but I let her fall. Absol returns that fish. Celio takes 2 hits even after spike damage, as does Crawdont. Now it just seems like a wasted move. Not wanting to risk anything with the double teaming fish, Absol just pairs songs. Then it's a race against the clock to see if I can knock out Kingdra before the song does. Absol does a good job with those 2 turns, but doesn't quite make it. That's alright, you still earn the final badge. Making my way through Victory Road, Metang Earthquakes through a few random Mons, getting to level 45, where it can finally evolve, unlocking its full potential. And that's the last evolution in this video. Only one of the hardest to catch Mons in Hoenn evolves, but he's all I'll need for sick little Wally. 2 returns easily defeats the dancing and safeguarding Altaria. Delcatty is one shot with a crit. Metagross still has nightmares about the Watson battle, but finally overcomes his Magneton fear with Earthquake. Roselia is psychicked, leaving just Gardevoir. Not for long though, this kid barely did anything to my evolved Steel thing. All of a sudden the Elite Four isn't looking so bad. I lead with Skarmory to spikes away at Mightyena, all the while getting sand in her eyes. Sand is very damaging to machinery, like a metal flying bird, necessitating a swap after a single steel wing. Metagross has Brick Break and a Shell Bell. Of course, Shiftry makes things unnecessarily difficult with Torment, preventing a simple Brick Break sweep. What a jerk move. Cacturne is Earthquaked and Braked, while Crawdont survives decently well with several heals. Eventually, he too is defeated. Finally, we have Absol left as Metagross unveils his secret and unnecessary move, at least right now, Explosion. That'll be my backup if I ever get into a pinch. Not that it will do much of anything to Phoebe's ghosts. Instead, Absol Swords Dances on the expected Protect. Declops uses a second one, but is then Shadow Balled. Banette quickly follows suit. Because Sableye survives the first hit, Absol dances some more, knocking it right out. Her other 2 Mons suffer the same fate. It may not have been a stab move, but again, Dark is purely special in Gen 3, which is wasted with Absol's massive attack. For Glacia, I start with Relicanth to Ancient Power, hoping for an Omni Boost. And I get one, on the 3rd and final hit. Walrein survives a crit, just barely, and I decide to Double Edge, which not only does a pathetic amount of damage, but also hurts Relicanth. Huh, I could have sworn this thing had Rock Head, but apparently not. That was silly. Either way, Absol picks it off after being outsped by this fat lard. He falls to Glalie, bringing out Skarmory to double Steel Wing. The second Celio needs a few Brick Breaks from Metagross, shattering a pointless light screen. And the final Glalie is Brick Breaked as well. I had hoped Relicanth would do better with that boost, but oh well, he tried. I give him another chance against Shelgon, but this time he really just needs to yawn. After some stalling, the dragon falls asleep. I pivot to Absol to Ice Beam the sleeping non-giant a few times. After a Dragon Dance by Altaria, I expect a double edge, so I swap back to Relicanth on a heal, who immediately gets another Omni Boost, easily knocking out Altaria. The fish is back in the game, guys. He fails to outspeed Flygon, survives an Earthquake, and knocks it right out with Ice Beam. While he could do something to Kingdra, I'd rather put it to sleep just in case. He dies, but this allows Absol to Swords Dance twice, though Return is apparently still too weak. After several smokescreens and surfs, he wins, knocking out the Water Dragon. Of course, Salamence knocks him right out. With 2 Steel Mons left, I only have one chance at victory, exploding with Metagross, which works perfectly well. That was mighty close though. I may have lost out on that Salamence experience, but I have several rare candies here to treat my Mons with. I'd like to say I love all of my Mons equally, but let's be honest here, Skarmory hasn't been doing that great in the Elite Four, so she gets less than the rest. Metagross begins the Wallace battle, Psychicking Wailord. It certainly is not a 2-hit KO, but I'm hoping for a special defense boost at some point. It eventually does work, as Metagross wins, but with only 40 HP left. Expecting Earthquake, I pivot to Skarmory on a Surf. That's not what I wanted. She Sand attacks Whiscash as many times as possible, and then begins to Spikes. She doesn't last very long though. With -6 accuracy, Absol feels safe enough to set up with Swords Dance, though Whiscash fails to be returned, and one-shots with Earthquake. Well, that sucks. I still managed to get to Gyarados this round, but that's as far as I make it. On the next attempt, Skarmory does a much better job surviving, even hitting Whiscash with Fly several times before swapping to Absol. This time, he stays alive after a double Swords Dance, knocking it right out. He is toxic by Tentacruel, but that's fine. Ludicolo is one-shot, thanks in part to Spike's damage, though Gyarados outspeeds to Hyper Beam. That's sad, but it gives Relicanth a chance to yawn. Next turn, he gets a freaking Omni Boost yet again. I swear, this is the luckiest fish I've ever seen. He easily knocks out Gyarados, and almost Milotic too. She recovers, Toxics, and Relicanth almost survives a Surf thanks to yet another Omni Boost. But the poison damage was just too much. No matter, now that I'm in a tough spot again, let's just explode, because why not? It works, as we become the new Hoenn champion with a bang. However, it was brought to my attention that while Steven does have 2 hard-to-catch Mons, the rest of his team is just kind of eh. Especially Claydol with a 90 catch rate. That's gross. So let's prove that my hard-to-catch Mons are tougher, even while being several levels lower. I did use rare candies to get to level 70, because I wasn't going to grind that long. Relicanth starts off yawning Skarmory, and immediately getting another boost. If I didn't know any better, I'd say I was cheating or something, but I swear I'm not. This is just crazy. Steven is somewhat clever, I'll give him that, swapping to Claydol, who resists rock moves, and light screening to prevent it from falling to Surf. That's just a stalling technique, however, not saving Claydol in the long run. Instead of thundering, Aggron tries to use the 4 times effective Solar Beam, never getting a chance. Of course, Cradily easily knocks it out, Omni Boost not really mattering. Still, we're in a pretty good spot here. Skarmory makes up for her poor Elite Four showing, defeating Cradily with a few Steel Wings, and doing the same thing to Armaldo too. Against Steven's still sleeping Skarmory, Absol pops out with a brand new move, Flamethrower. He's not a great special attacker, but it's good enough. And this puts him in the perfect position to Perish Song Metagross, basically ensuring my victory. Skarmory stalls with Fly just a bit, as Metagross is unable to swap, falling to a horrific sounding song. And that, my friends, is how you beat Pokemon Emerald using only the hardest to catch Pokemon. Did you guess who they were going to be? Before we take off, I will say I was pleasantly surprised how well Relicanth did. I expected that fish to be dead, or more accurately, extinct weight, but he actually did a great job. Mostly due to the crazy amount of Omni Boost, but still, I'll take it. Thank you for watching till the end, and a special thanks to my YouTube and Patreon members. I really appreciate your support. As always, I'll see you in the next region.